My brother Noah was 8 years old when the world told us we were lucky. I was 12. That was the day Alexander Blackwood walked into our lives. Everyone else saw a hero. I saw a man wearing a perfect mask. The cameras loved him. The reporters loved him. The people at the orphanage loved him. Mr. Blackwood, why did you decide to adopt children instead of simply donating money? A reporter asked. Alexander smiled warmly, kneeling beside Noah and me. Because money can buy food and shelter, he said softly, but every child deserves a family. The reporters immediately smiled. The cameras flashed. Someone behind them whispered, "What a wonderful man." I watched him place his hand on Noah's shoulder. The gesture looked gentle, but I noticed something nobody else did. His fingers tightened for half a second, just enough to make Noah stop moving, just enough to remind him who was in control. Noah didn't notice. He was too excited. "Ethan," he whispered, looking at the expensive car waiting outside. "Is this really ours?" I looked at my little brother. For years, Noah and I had shared a small room at the orphanage. We had shared old clothes. We had shared every meal. Whenever he was scared, he held my hand. Now he was looking at a billionaire's mansion like it was a dream. "Yeah," I said quietly. "It is," but something inside me felt wrong. I didn't know what it was yet. I only knew one thing. People who were truly kind didn't need everyone to know how kind they were. The Blackwood estate was bigger than any place I had ever seen. The moment we entered, Noah's eyes widened. A giant staircase, expensive furniture, a dining table that could fit 20 people, a room filled with toys. Noah looked at me and smiled. "Ethan, we made it." I smiled back, because he needed me to, but my eyes were already moving around the house. I noticed things other people ignored. There were cameras in almost every hallway. Not obvious ones. Small black lenses hidden in corners. The employees moved quietly. Too quietly. Nobody laughed. Nobody joked. Nobody acted like they lived in a happy home. They acted like they were afraid of making a mistake. A woman wearing a maid uniform walked past us. Noah smiled. "Hi." The woman immediately lowered her head. "Hello, young master." Then she quickly walked away. I frowned. Young master. That wasn't something people called a child. That was something people called someone who belonged to someone else. That night, Alexander gave us a tour of the house. He showed Noah his bedroom first. The room was incredible. A huge bed, a gaming system, shelves full of books, a window overlooking the garden. Noah looked like he couldn't believe it. "Can I really sleep here?" Alexander smiled. "Of course." Noah turned to me. "Ethan, look, I see it. You think this is the best room ever?" I nodded. "It is." Noah smiled. For the first time in years, I saw my brother completely happy. Then Alexander spoke. "However, there are rules." Noah immediately stood straight. "What rules?" Alexander walked closer. "Rules that every member of this family follows." His voice was calm, almost fatherly, but something about it made me uncomfortable. "First," he said, "you never leave the property without permission. Second, you never invite outsiders here. Third, you never discuss family matters with anyone." Noah blinked. Alexander smiled. "Because people are jealous of what we have." He looked at me, especially at me. "Some people don't understand success." I understood what he meant. He wasn't talking about strangers. He was warning me. A few days later, I learned the first real lesson about Alexander Blackwood. He hated losing control. Noah accidentally broke a small decoration in the living room. It wasn't expensive. It wasn't important. He was playing with a toy car and accidentally knocked it over. The sound wasn't even loud, but Alexander appeared within seconds. "What happened?" Noah immediately froze. "I'm sorry." Alexander looked at the broken object, then at Noah. For a moment, I thought he would say it was okay. Instead, he asked, "Do you know why this happened?" Noah looked confused. "Because I was careless." Alexander nodded. "Exactly." Noah lowered his head. "They'll be more careful." Alexander smiled. "That's what I want." He walked away. Anyone watching would have thought he was teaching a child responsibility. But I saw Noah's hands shaking. After Alexander left, I sat beside him. "Hey." Noah looked at me. Did I mess everything up? My chest tightened. No. He wasn't angry because of the decoration. Noah looked confused. Then why? I didn't answer, because I didn't know how to explain it. I only knew that Alexander didn't care about the broken object. He cared that Noah had made a mistake. He cared that Noah had reminded him he wasn't perfect. Months passed. Everyone thought we were living a dream. Alexander appeared on television. He talked about helping children. He donated millions. He stood beside us and called us his sons. People loved him. But inside the mansion, things were different. Alexander controlled everything. Our schedule, our clothes, our friends, even what we were allowed to say. One day, I asked if Noah could join a soccer team. Alexander looked at me. No, he should make friends. He already has a family. That's not the same thing. The room became silent. Alexander stared at me. It was the first time I openly challenged him. Then he smiled. Not a kind smile. A warning. You are very protective of your brother. Yes, that is a weakness. I clenched my fists. He's my brother. Alexander walked closer. And I am the reason he has a future. His voice became colder. Never forget that. That night, I stayed awake for hours. I looked at Noah sleeping. He trusted Alexander. He believed this man saved us. But I knew something Noah didn't. Alexander Blackwood didn't save children. He collected them. A year after we arrived, I found the first proof that my instincts were right. I was walking past Alexander's office when I heard voices. The door wasn't completely closed. I wasn't trying to spy. But then I heard something that made me stop. A man inside said, "Another child disappeared from the program." Alexander replied calmly, "Then make sure nobody asks questions." My heart stopped. The program? What program? The man continued, "What about the records?" Alexander laughed softly. "Records can be changed." I stood there, frozen. For the first time, I understood. The perfect billionaire, the generous philanthropist, the man everyone admired. He wasn't protecting his reputation. He was hiding something. I quietly stepped away before they noticed me. That night, I looked at Noah. He was drawing a picture of our new family. Him, me, Alexander. 3 people smiling together. My heart hurt, because my little brother finally believed he had found a home. And I knew the truth. We weren't living in a home. We were living inside a cage. And someday, I was going to find the key. For the next 2 years, I became an expert at pretending. Pretending Alexander Blackwood was a good man. Pretending I trusted him. Pretending I didn't notice the fear in every employee's eyes whenever he entered a room. Most importantly, pretending in front of Noah. Because Noah was still just a kid. He finally had the things he had always dreamed about. A comfortable bed, good food, a school with expensive uniforms, a person he could call father. I didn't want to destroy that illusion unless I had no choice. So I stayed quiet. I watched, and I waited. Alexander had one rule that he repeated constantly. "Everything you have exists because of me." He said it during breakfast. He said it during family meetings. He said it whenever we disagreed with him. At first, Noah thought it was normal. "Ethan," he once told me, "he just wants us to appreciate him." I looked at my little brother. Does someone who loves you need to remind you every day that you owe them? Noah frowned. "You don't understand him." Maybe he was right. Maybe I didn't understand Alexander. Because I couldn't understand how someone could smile at the world while making the people closest to him afraid. Alexander's control became stronger as we got older. When Noah wanted to invite classmates over, Alexander refused. "No strangers in this house. They're just kids from school," Noah said. Alexander looked at him. "Noah, just one word." But Noah immediately stopped talking. I noticed it. The way his confidence disappeared. The way his shoulders dropped. Alexander didn't need to shout. He had trained everyone in the house to obey with a single look. Later that night, Noah came into my room. "Ethan, yeah, do you think Mr. Blackwood really loves us?" The question caught me off guard. I put down the book in my hand. "Why are you asking that?" Noah sat on my bed. "Because sometimes," he hesitated, "sometimes I feel like he's happy when we do exactly what he wants." I stared at him. For the first time, Noah was noticing it too. "What makes you think that?" Noah looked down. Yesterday, I told him I wanted to choose my own classes next year. And he got angry. Did he yell? No. Noah shook his head. That's what scares me. I stayed silent, because I knew exactly what he meant. Alexander was most dangerous when he was calm. The first time I saw Alexander truly lose control was when I refused one of his orders. I was 15 years old. Alexander had arranged a charity event. He wanted Noah and me to stand beside him while he gave a speech. That was normal. Everything about our lives had become part of his public image. Before we went on stage, Alexander handed me a script. Read this. I looked at the paper. It was a speech about how grateful we were, how Alexander had changed our lives, how he was the father we always needed. I looked up. I can't say this. The room went silent. Alexander slowly turned toward me. What did you say? I said I can't say this. Noah looked nervous. Ethan. Alexander walked closer. Do you know how many children would do anything to be where you are? I didn't answer. He continued. I gave you everything. You gave us a house. His expression changed. A house? Yes. I looked directly at him. A house isn't a family. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Alexander smiled. But it wasn't kindness. It was something colder. Leave. I thought he meant leave the room. But he looked at Noah. Your brother needs time to understand gratitude. My heart sank. Don't involve him. Alexander stepped closer. That depends on you. That was the moment I understood his method. He didn't threaten me. He threatened the person I loved. That night, I was locked in my room. No phone, no computer, no dinner. First, I thought it was just punishment. Then I heard Noah outside. Please open the door. I stood up immediately. Noah. Ethan. Are you okay? I walked to the door. I'm fine. You didn't eat. I'm not hungry. There was silence. Then Noah whispered. I'm sorry. My heart broke. For what? Because he's angry at you because of me. I grabbed the door handle. Noah, listen to me. What? None of this is your fault. But if I wasn't here. No. My voice became firm. Never say that. A few seconds passed. Then Noah said something I would never forget. Ethan. Yeah. Promise me we won't stay here forever. I closed my eyes, because that was the promise I had wanted to make for years. But I knew promises were dangerous, especially against someone like Alexander Blackwood. Still, I answered, promise. After that day, I started investigating Alexander more carefully. I stopped looking at him like a powerful businessman. I started looking at him like a criminal. I studied his companies, his charities, his investments, everything. And the more I discovered, the worse it became. The charity foundation that made him famous had strange financial records. Millions of dollars disappeared every year. Some employees who questioned him suddenly resigned. Some projects were announced publicly but never completed. Alexander wasn't donating money. He was moving it, hiding it, cleaning it. But I still didn't have enough. I needed proof, real proof. One night, while searching through old documents in the library, I found something strange. A folder hidden behind a shelf. It wasn't labeled. Inside were files, lots of them, children's names, medical records, photographs. My hands became cold. I recognized some names. They were children who had once lived in Alexander's charity homes. But beside some names were notes. Transferred, removed, closed case. I didn't understand. Then I saw one sentence written at the bottom of a page. And everything inside me froze. Suitable candidates identified through the foundation network. Candidates? For what? I kept searching. Then I heard footsteps. Someone was coming. I quickly put everything back. A second later, the library door opened. Alexander stood there, looking at me. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he smiled. What are you doing here? I forced myself to stay calm. Reading. He looked at the book in my hand. Then at the shelf behind me. His eyes narrowed slightly. You've always been curious. I smiled. Is curiosity a problem? Alexander walked closer. No. He stopped in front of me. Curiosity is useful. Then he leaned closer and whispered, but curiosity can also get people hurt. My entire body went cold, because I finally knew. Alexander wasn't just hiding something. He knew I was looking, and he had been watching me all along. That night, I made a decision. I couldn't escape yet. I couldn't take Noah and run. Not without protection. Not without evidence. Because if I failed, Alexander would make sure we never got another chance. So I made myself a promise. I would stay. I would pretend. I would become exactly what Alexander wanted me to become. Until the day came when I could take everything from him. His money, his reputation, his empire, and most importantly, his freedom. Because one day, Alexander Blackwood would understand something. The child he tried to control was the person who would destroy him. I spent the next 3 years playing a role. To Alexander Blackwood, I became the son he wanted. Quiet, obedient, useful. But inside, I was counting every day, every conversation, every suspicious transaction, every person who disappeared from his world. I learned something important about Alexander. A man like him didn't become powerful because he was kind. He became powerful because he knew how to hide his cruelty. The world saw a billionaire who rescued children. I saw a man who collected people he could control. And I was waiting for the moment when he finally showed me his real face. That moment came on my 18th birthday. I thought Alexander would at least pretend to be a father that day. After all, he had spent years telling the world how much he cared about us. But when I walked into his office that morning, there was no cake, no gift, no congratulations, only a black folder sitting on his desk. Alexander looked at me. "You're 18 now." I stood there silently. "Yes." He pushed the folder toward me. "Open it." I picked it up. Inside were documents, company reports, financial records, names, numbers. At first, I thought it was some kind of business lesson. Then I noticed the details. Several companies I had never heard of. Payments moving between different accounts. Transactions hidden through multiple organizations. I looked up. "What is this?" Alexander leaned back in his chair. "A test. A test. Yes." He smiled. "You've spent years watching me." My fingers tightened around the folder. "You knew." Of course I knew. My blood went cold. Alexander laughed quietly. "Ethan, do you really think you could investigate me inside my own house without me noticing?" I didn't answer. He continued, "That curiosity of yours always fascinated me." He stood up and walked toward the window. "You were different from Noah." That sentence immediately caught my attention. "How?" "Your brother was grateful." Alexander looked back at me. He accepted what I gave him. His eyes became colder. "But you always looked at me like you were waiting for me to fail." I said nothing, because he was right. I had never trusted him. Not once. Alexander returned to his desk. "Now that you are 18, you have a choice." "What choice?" "You can continue living like a child." He pointed toward the folder. "Or you can become useful." I looked at him. "What do you want me to do?" A small smile appeared on his face. "Smart question." He opened another file. Inside was a list of names. "These are business partners." I read through them. Some names looked familiar. Powerful people, politicians, executives, people who appeared in newspapers beside Alexander. "I want you to deliver some information." "What kind of information?" "Information that doesn't need to be explained." I stared at him. Then I understood. He wasn't asking me to work for his company. He was asking me to become part of his secrets. "I won't do anything illegal." The room became silent. Alexander looked disappointed. Not angry, disappointed. And somehow that was worse. "You still don't understand your position." He walked toward me. "You live in my house. You wear clothes I bought. You received education because of me." His voice became lower. "You exist because I allowed you to." My fists clenched. But I controlled myself. Because Noah was still inside this house. And Alexander knew exactly how to use that. That evening, Alexander proved it. I found Noah sitting alone in the living room. His face looked worried. "What happened?" He looked at me. Alexander talked to me. My heart immediately tightened. "What did he say?" Noah looked down. "He asked if you still appreciated everything he did for us." I stayed silent. "He said you were becoming difficult." I sat beside him. "Noah, listen to me." He looked at me. "Do you trust me?" Without hesitation. He nodded. "Always." That answer hurt more than anything. because I knew I was keeping secrets from him. But those secrets were the only thing protecting him. I need you to do something. What? If Alexander asks you questions about me. I paused. Don't tell him anything. Noah looked confused. Because sometimes people ask questions because they care. I looked at him, and sometimes they ask because they want to control you. Noah became quiet. Then he asked, Ethan, yeah, are we in danger? For a moment, I wanted to lie. I wanted to tell him everything was fine, but I couldn't. Not anymore. Yes, his face changed. But I won't let anything happen to you. Over the next few months, Alexander slowly pulled me into his world. He introduced me to his executives. He let me attend meetings. He showed everyone that I was his chosen successor. The public loved it. The billionaire adopting an orphan and preparing him to inherit his empire. It was the perfect story. But behind closed doors, I saw the truth. The meetings weren't about charity. They were about control. People came to Alexander afraid. They left afraid. And everyone knew one rule: never ask questions. One night, Alexander finally showed me what he was really involved in. He brought me to a private meeting. There were several men inside. None of them looked like normal businessmen. They looked nervous. Alexander handed me a document. Review this. I opened it. First, I didn't understand. Then I saw medical terms, patient information, transport schedules. My hands froze. What is this? Nobody answered. Alexander looked at me. You're smarter than this. I looked at him, and for the first time, he stopped pretending. This is how the world works. My stomach turned. You're selling people. Alexander smiled. No, his voice was calm. In providing opportunities. Opportunities. Yes. He walked closer. Some people have nothing. Some people are willing to trade something valuable. I stared at him in disbelief. You're talking about human beings. He shrugged. Everything has value. At that moment, every suspicion I had ever carried became reality. Alexander Blackwood wasn't just corrupt. He was a monster. I wanted to attack him. I wanted to expose him immediately. But I looked around. The men in the room. The security outside. The power he had built. I knew the truth. If I acted emotionally, I would lose, and Noah would pay the price. So I did the hardest thing I had ever done. I lowered my head. I understand. Alexander smiled. Good. He thought he had won. He thought he had finally broken me. He didn't know the truth. That was the moment I stopped trying to escape. I stopped trying to survive. I started planning his downfall. From that day forward, I became the person closest to Alexander Blackwood. The person he trusted most. The person who knew every secret. The person who would eventually destroy everything he built. Because Alexander made one mistake. He thought he was turning me into his servant. But he was actually giving me a front row seat to his entire empire. And one day, I would use everything I learned to bury him. After that night, everything changed. Alexander Blackwood thought he had finally won. He believed he had taken my fear and turned it into obedience. He believed I had accepted my place. The orphan boy who once looked at him with suspicion was now standing beside him as his successor. That was exactly what I wanted him to believe. Because the closer I stood to Alexander, the more secrets I could uncover. And the more secrets I uncovered, the closer he was to losing everything. The first thing I learned about powerful criminals was this: they never believed they were criminals. Alexander genuinely thought he was smarter than everyone else. He didn't see himself as a monster. He saw himself as someone above ordinary rules. During one meeting, one of his executives made a mistake. A report contained a small error. Nothing serious. A normal boss would have corrected it. Alexander destroyed him. You wasted my time. The executive lowered his head. I'm sorry, Mr. Blackwood. It won't happen again. Alexander looked at him coldly. You said that last time. Please give me another chance. Alexander smiled. That smile made the entire room uncomfortable. Everyone deserves a chance. The executive looked relieved. Then Alexander continued. But not everyone deserves a second one. The man was fired immediately. Later, when we left the meeting, I asked, why did you do that? Alexander looked at me. Because fear creates loyalty. I stared ahead. That isn't loyalty. He smiled. Then what is it? I didn't answer, because I already knew. It was control. Over the next year, Alexander gave me more responsibility. He wanted everyone to believe I was becoming like him. He brought me into private meetings. He showed me financial documents. He introduced me to people who would never speak honestly in front of outsiders. They thought I was becoming part of the empire. They didn't know I was documenting its collapse. Every night, after everyone slept, I copied files. I recorded conversations. I memorized names. I created a hidden collection of evidence. I knew I only had one chance. If Alexander discovered what I was doing, he wouldn't just punish me, he would destroy Noah. And that was the one thing I couldn't allow. Noah was changing too. He was 13 now. He wasn't the little boy who believed every smile was real. He started noticing things. The way employees disappeared. The way Alexander's kindness always came with conditions. The way everyone in the house acted afraid. One night, he found me in my room looking through documents. He closed the door behind him. Ethan. I quickly hid the papers. What are you doing here? He crossed his arms. You're hiding something from me. I looked away. Noah. No. His voice surprised me. You always protect me. You always tell me everything is okay. He stepped closer. But you're scared. I stayed silent. That was enough of an answer. Noah looked down. I was stupid, wasn't I? My expression changed. What? I thought he loved us. I immediately shook my head. Noah, I thought you were wrong. His eyes became red. I defended him. I walked over and put my hand on his shoulder. Listen to me. He looked at me. You were a kid. But you knew. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was afraid. Because you were happy. Because I couldn't risk losing you. But I didn't say those words. Instead, I told him, because my job was to protect you. Noah looked at me. Even from him. I nodded. Especially from him. From that day forward, Noah became my partner. Not because I wanted him involved. Because I realized something. Alexander had underestimated him. Everyone did. They saw a 13-year-old boy. They didn't see someone who had spent years watching, listening, and learning. Noah knew things I didn't. He knew which employees could be trusted. He knew which rooms Alexander entered when he wanted privacy. He knew the house better than anyone. Together, we started building a plan. A real plan. Not just escape, justice. But Alexander was becoming more dangerous. He started testing my loyalty. One evening, he called me into his office. There's something I want you to do. I looked at him. What? He placed a phone on the desk. Call this number. I didn't move. His eyes narrowed. You ask too many questions. I forced myself to smile, just trying to understand. Alexander leaned back. Understanding is useful. He paused. But curiosity is dangerous. The same words he had said years ago. A warning. I picked up the phone. Inside, my heart was racing. I knew whatever happened next would tell me how much he trusted me. I made the call. A man answered. Alexander watched me carefully. I repeated the message exactly as instructed. When the call ended, Alexander smiled. Good. He took the phone back. You're finally learning. I nodded. But inside, I felt sick. Because I knew what I had just helped arrange. Another illegal transaction. Another person being used. Another piece of evidence. That night, I discovered the biggest secret yet. Alexander's underground operation was much larger than I imagined. It wasn't just one group. It was an entire network. Doctors, middlemen, fake organizations, private facilities, people with money and influence. The charity foundation wasn't just a way to clean his reputation. It was how he found vulnerable people, people who had no one protecting them, children, families, people like us. My hands shook as I read through the documents. Then I saw something that made my blood run cold. A file with my name. I opened it. Inside was information from the day Alexander adopted us. My age, my medical records, Noah's information, everything. At the bottom was a note. Ethan Walker, high intelligence, strong resistance, potential long-term value. I stared at those words. Long-term value. Not son, not child. Value. That was all we had ever been to him. Assets, tools, Objects. I closed the file. For years, I wondered why Alexander chose us. Now I knew. He never rescued us. He selected us. And that realization changed something inside me. Before, I wanted to escape. Now, I wanted him destroyed. Not because I hated him, because there were other children, other families, other people who would suffer if nobody stopped him. A few weeks later, Alexander announced something unexpected. A huge charity event, the biggest one of his career. He wanted me and Noah beside him. The world needs to see my family. I almost laughed. Family. That word sounded disgusting coming from him. But I smiled. They'll be there. Alexander looked pleased. He didn't know that while he prepared his perfect public image, I was preparing the evidence that would destroy it. He thought he had created his greatest achievement, his future successor, his loyal son. But the truth was much different. I wasn't his successor. I was his biggest threat. And soon, the world would finally see the monster hiding behind the billionaire's smile. For years, I carried the truth alone. I watched Alexander Blackwood smile at cameras. I watched people praise him. I watched strangers call him a hero. And every time they did, I remembered the things hidden behind that perfect image. The files, the threats, the children who disappeared, the people who were too afraid to speak. But the hardest part was not knowing the truth. The hardest part was watching Noah still believe Alexander was our family. Until that changed. The charity event was supposed to be Alexander's greatest achievement. Thousands of people attended. Politicians praised him. Business leaders shook his hand. Reporters surrounded him. And beside him stood me and Noah, the two adopted children who supposedly proved Alexander Blackwood's kindness. Perfect picture. Perfect lie. Alexander placed his hand on Noah's shoulder. The cameras immediately turned toward them. My sons are the reason I continue this work, Alexander said. The crowd applauded. Noah smiled. But I noticed something. He wasn't smiling the same way anymore. He was watching Alexander, carefully, like he was finally trying to understand the man behind the mask. That night, after the event ended, Noah found me in my room. He closed the door. Then he locked it. That alone told me something was wrong. What happened? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he placed something on my desk. A small recording device. My heart stopped. Where did you get this? Noah looked at me. I found it in Alexander's office. I immediately stood up. Noah, did he see you? No. Are you sure? He nodded. Then he whispered, Ethan. What? I heard him talking. I stayed silent. What did he say? Noah's face changed. He wasn't talking like a father. I sat down slowly. Tell me everything. Noah took a deep breath. He was talking to some people about children. My hands tightened. What kind of children? Noah swallowed. Children from the foundation. The room became quiet. He said some of them were useful. That word. Useful. The same word Alexander used for everything. Noah looked at me. Ethan. His voice trembled. Were you right all along? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. My silence told him everything. For several minutes, Noah just stared at the floor. I expected him to cry. I expected him to break. Instead, he asked, Why didn't you tell me? I looked at him. Because I wanted you to have something good. He shook his head. That wasn't real. Noah, I spent years defending him. His voice became louder. I thought you were being unfair. I walked toward him. You were a kid, but you were suffering alone because of me. I grabbed his shoulders. Listen to me. He looked up. You were the reason I survived. Noah froze. What? When I wanted to give up. I thought about you. I lowered my voice. You were the reason I stayed. His eyes became red. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Noah asked, Can we stop him? I looked at my little brother, the same boy I had promised to protect years ago. But now he wasn't just someone I protected. He was standing beside me. Yes, I answered, but we have to be smarter than him. From that day forward, we became a team. No more secrets. No more pretending between us. I told Noah everything. The hidden files. The criminal network. The evidence I had collected. He listened quietly. Then he surprised me. You missed something. I looked at him. What? The security system. I frowned. What about it? You always focus on Alexander. Noah pointed toward the house map I had drawn. But this house is his biggest weakness. I stared at him, then I smiled, because I suddenly remembered something. Noah had always noticed details people ignored. He knew every hallway, every employee, every routine. Alexander thought Noah was harmless. That was his mistake. Over the next few months, we worked carefully. Noah helped me collect information without attracting attention. He memorized security schedules. He noticed when Alexander changed routines. He learned which employees were secretly afraid of him. And slowly, we discovered something important. Alexander wasn't as powerful as he wanted everyone to believe. His entire empire depended on one thing: fear. Everyone around him was afraid. But fear only worked when people believed they were alone. We were no longer alone. Then Alexander made a mistake. He underestimated Noah. One afternoon, he called my brother into his office. I found Noah afterward sitting silently in the hallway. I immediately knew something happened. What did he say? Noah looked at me. He asked if you were loyal. My heart tightened. What did you answer? I said yes. Good. But then he asked something else. What? Noah looked at me. He asked if you ever talked to me about leaving. I froze. What did you say? I said no. I let out a breath. Then Noah continued. But he didn't believe me. My expression changed. He knows something. That night, Alexander came to my room. Alone. That was unusual. Usually, he brought security or employees. This time, he wanted me to understand something. You and your brother are becoming closer. I looked at him calmly. We're brothers. Yes. He smiled. That's exactly the problem. I didn't react. Alexander walked around the room. When I adopted you, I thought you would be grateful. He stopped. But you were always different. I said nothing. You watched me. You questioned me. You resisted. His expression became colder. But Noah, he smiled. Noah loved me. My hands tightened. He trusted me. I stepped forward. Don't talk about him like that. Alexander laughed. There it is. What? That anger. He looked satisfied. You care about him more than yourself. Silence. Then Alexander said, that makes you easy to control. I looked directly at him. No. His smile faded slightly. That makes me dangerous. For the first time, Alexander looked surprised. Only for a second. But I saw it. He realized something. The frightened boy from years ago was gone. After he left, I knew things were about to change. Alexander was no longer just watching me. He was testing me. The time for hiding was ending. I looked at Noah. He looked back at me. Neither of us needed to speak. We both knew. The final battle had started. Alexander Blackwood believed he had trapped 2 orphan boys inside his empire. He was wrong. He had given us access to everything. His secrets, his crimes, his weaknesses. And soon, the entire world would know who he really was. The moment Alexander Blackwood realized we were no longer afraid of him, everything changed. For years, he controlled people with the same method: fear. He convinced everyone around him that they had nowhere else to go. Employees stayed silent because they needed their jobs. Partners followed orders because they feared losing everything. Children obeyed because they believed they had no choice. And for a long time, Noah and I were trapped in the same way. But Alexander made one mistake. He thought fear was stronger than determination. He never understood that someone who had already lost everything could become impossible to control. After Alexander confronted me, I knew he would move quickly. A man like him didn't wait for problems to grow. He destroyed them before they became threats. So I made sure Noah and I were ready. The evidence was hidden in several places. The financial records, the illegal transactions, the names of people involved, the documents proving the charity foundation was a cover. Everything we needed to expose him was prepared. But there was one problem. We still needed a way out. Alexander owned the house. He controlled the security. He controlled the people around us. Leaving was not as simple as walking through the front door. 3 days later, Alexander called me to his office. I knew something was wrong before I entered. The guards outside were different. The atmosphere had changed. When I walked in, Alexander was sitting behind his desk. He didn't ask me to sit. That was unusual, he said, looking at the documents in front of him. I used to think you were my greatest success. I stayed quiet. You came here as a scared child. He smiled. Now you understand business, power, influence. He looked at me. I created you. I almost laughed, but I controlled myself. No, his eyes narrowed. No, you didn't create me. I looked directly at him. You tried to break me. The room became silent. For a few seconds, Alexander didn't speak. Then he smiled, a dangerous smile. I was hoping you would say that. My heart tightened, because I knew he had something planned. Alexander pressed a button on his desk. The door opened. 2 security guards entered. My body immediately became tense. Alexander looked at me. Your brother has been asking too many questions. My blood turned cold. What did you do? Nothing. He stood up. Not yet. I stepped forward. If you touch him. Alexander interrupted me. Careful. His voice was calm. That anger is exactly why you lose. He walked closer. You still think this is about strength. He pointed toward my chest. It's about control. Then he said the words I had feared. Noah will be transferred. My face changed. Transferred where? Alexander smiled. That depends on your behavior. For years, I had imagined hurting him. For years, I had imagined seeing him finally afraid. But in that moment, all I felt was anger. Not because he threatened me, because he threatened Noah. I found Noah later that day. He was sitting in his room. The door was locked from outside. When he saw me, he immediately stood up. Ethan, I looked at the lock. They're keeping you here. He nodded. He said it was for my safety. I clenched my fists. Alexander's favorite trick. Turning cruelty into protection. Are you okay? Noah nodded. Then he surprised me. I know what he's doing. I looked at him. He wants you to panic. Yes, he wants you to make a mistake. I stared at my brother. The little boy who once believed Alexander was a hero was gone. You're right. Noah walked closer. So don't. I smiled slightly. When did you become smarter than me? He smiled. Probably when you stopped telling me everything. For the first time in days. I laughed. A real laugh. Because even in the middle of hell, Noah was still Noah. That night, Alexander thought he had won. He increased security, restricted our movement, confiscated our devices. He believed he had finally trapped us. But he didn't understand something. A cage only works when the person inside wants to stay alive at any cost. We had already accepted the risk. We were not fighting for ourselves anymore. We were fighting for every person Alexander had hurt. The next morning, Alexander called me downstairs. He had prepared a meeting. Several of his executives were there. He wanted to show me something. This is your final opportunity. I looked at him. Final opportunity for what? To prove you are my son. I almost laughed. After everything, after years of lies, he still believed this was about family. Alexander placed a document in front of me. Sign this. I looked down. It was a legal agreement. It made me officially part of his company, his successor, his empire, a lifetime connection. He wanted me trapped permanently. I looked at him, and if I refuse, he smiled. Then you lose everything. I picked up the pen. Everyone watched. Alexander looked satisfied. He thought I was surrendering. He thought he had broken me. I signed. His smile grew wider. Good choice. I placed the pen down. Then I looked at him. You should read what you make people sign. His expression changed. What? I smiled. Because he didn't know. The document he gave me had been prepared by his own lawyers months ago. Hidden inside were clauses connecting him directly to several illegal operations. By forcing me to sign it, he had unknowingly created another piece of evidence against himself. Alexander grabbed the paper. His face slowly changed. You, for the first time in years, I saw something I had never seen before. Fear. Real fear. But Alexander recovered quickly. He tore the document apart. You think this changes anything? No. I looked at him. But it proves something. What? That you're not untouchable. The room became silent. Alexander stared at me. Then he whispered, You really think you can defeat me? I stepped closer. No. I paused. I know. That evening, Noah and I started the final stage of our plan. The evidence was ready. The escape route was ready. The people who could help us were waiting. But there was one final problem. Alexander still had control of the house, and he was watching every move we made. So we needed him to believe one thing, that he had won, that we had given up, that we were finally broken. Because the greatest weakness of a man like Alexander Blackwood was his own arrogance. He didn't lose because he was weak. He lost because he believed nobody was smart enough to beat him. And soon, we were going to prove him wrong. For 18 years, Alexander Blackwood controlled everything. His companies, his reputation, his employees, his victims. And for a long time, he believed he controlled us too. That was his greatest mistake. Because while he was busy protecting his empire, he never realized that the 2 children he thought he owned had been quietly preparing the end of it. The night we escaped was the most dangerous night of my life. Not because I was afraid of leaving. I had dreamed about leaving for years. It was dangerous because Alexander finally knew something was wrong. The mansion that once looked beautiful was now a prison. Every hallway had cameras. Every entrance had guards. Every person inside could have been reporting to Alexander. But Noah and I had one advantage. We knew him better than anyone. We knew his habits, his arrogance, his belief that everyone was beneath him. And we knew he would never believe that the 2 children he controlled could actually defeat him. At midnight, Noah came to my room. He didn't knock. That was our signal. I looked at him. Ready. He nodded. For a moment, I saw the little boy from years ago. The child who held my hand when we entered this house. The child who believed Alexander saved us. Then I saw who he had become. Someone strong. Someone brave. My brother. Are you scared? I asked. Noah was quiet for a second. Then he answered honestly. Yes. I smiled. Me too. He looked surprised. You're scared. Of course. I looked at him. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. Then what does it mean? I opened the hidden compartment where we kept the final evidence. It means you do what's right anyway. Noah nodded. Then he picked up the drive containing the files. This ends tonight. I nodded. Yes. Our first step was getting past the security system. The same system Alexander used to control everyone inside the house. But Noah had spent months studying it. He knew where the cameras turned. He knew when the guards changed shifts. He knew every blind spot. The boy Alexander ignored became the person who made our escape possible. We moved quietly through the house. No words. No unnecessary movement. Then we reached the final hallway. The exit was only a few steps away. And then, the lights turned on. My entire body froze. Alexander was standing at the end of the hallway. Alone. Clapping slowly. Impressive. My heart sank. Noah stepped closer to me. Alexander smiled. I have to admit, I underestimated you. I said nothing. He looked at Noah. And you? His expression changed. The quiet one. Noah stared at him. You never saw me. Alexander laughed. Because you were never important. Those words hurt. I saw Noah's expression change. But this time, he didn't look broken. He looked angry. Alexander continued. I gave you everything. Noah answered quietly. No. Alexander frowned. No. You gave us things. Noah stepped forward. But you never gave us a family. The hallway became silent. For the first time, Alexander had no response. Then his expression changed. The fake kindness disappeared. The billionaire, the philanthropist, the father figure, all gone. Only the monster remained. You ungrateful children. His voice was cold. Do you know how many people would beg to have the life you had? I looked at him. You mean the life where you controlled every choice we made? His face tightened. The life where you threatened us. Alexander laughed. You still don't understand. He pointed at me. You survived because of me. No. I shook my head. We survived despite you. That sentence finally broke his calm. You think anyone will believe you? He smiled. The world knows who I am. I looked at him. No. I held up my phone. The world knows who you wanted them to believe you were. His smile disappeared. Because he understood. Everything was already uploaded. Every file. Every recording. Every transaction. Every name. Every conversation. Months earlier, I had created backups. Not just because I wanted to expose Alexander. Because I knew someone like him would try to destroy the evidence. Alexander grabbed his phone. Nothing. He tried calling his lawyer. No answer. His executives. No answer. Then his security chief rushed in. Mr. Blackwood. Alexander turned. What? The man looked terrified. The police are here. For the first time in my life, I saw Alexander Blackwood panic. Not anger. Not arrogance. Fear. Real fear. The police entered the mansion minutes later. Alexander immediately changed. The monster disappeared. The businessman returned. This is a misunderstanding. The officers ignored him. My attorneys will handle this. Nobody answered. I am Alexander Blackwood. One officer looked at him. We know exactly who you are. That sentence destroyed him, because for the first time, his name didn't give him power. It became evidence against him. The trial shocked the country. The man everyone once praised was exposed. The charity foundation, the hidden accounts, the illegal operations, the victims who finally found the courage to speak. Everything came out. Alexander's lawyers tried everything. They claimed he was being framed. They claimed I was a rebellious adopted son seeking revenge. Then the prosecution played the recordings. The room became silent. Everyone heard Alexander's own voice, his own words, his own crimes. He destroyed himself. During the final hearing, Alexander looked at me. For a moment, I saw the man from years ago, the man who walked into the orphanage smiling, the man everyone trusted. Then I remembered the truth. That person never existed. It was only a mask. You ruined my life, he whispered. I looked at him. No, I answered calmly. You ruined your own. His eyes filled with anger. I gave you everything. I shook my head. You gave us a cage. I paused. And we spent years building the key. The judge announced the verdict. Guilty. Alexander Blackwood, the billionaire once known as a hero, was sentenced to prison. The empire he built collapsed. The reputation he protected disappeared. The world finally saw him for what he was, a man who used kindness as a disguise. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded me and Noah. Ethan, do you regret exposing the man who raised you? I looked at Noah, then back at the cameras. No, I thought about the years we spent trapped, the fear, the lies, the children who never got the chance to escape. Then I answered, because he didn't raise us. He tried to own us. And nobody has the right to own another person. That night, Noah and I finally went somewhere we had dreamed about for years. A place where nobody watched us. Nobody controlled us. Nobody told us who we were. For the first time, we were free. But our story wasn't about escaping a billionaire. It was about proving something. Even the most powerful person in the world can fall, especially when the people he tried to destroy become the ones who bring him down. For the first time in 18 years, nobody was watching us. No cameras hidden in the walls. No guards standing outside our doors. No voice reminding us that everything we had belonged to someone else. Just silence. Peaceful silence. The kind of silence I used to dream about. But strangely, when I finally had freedom, I didn't know what to do with it. For years, every decision I made had one purpose: protect Noah, survive Alexander, collect evidence, escape. My entire life had been a battle, and now the battle was over. A few weeks after Alexander's arrest, Noah and I moved into a small apartment. It wasn't big. It wasn't luxurious. The kitchen was tiny. The furniture was simple. The walls were empty. But when Noah walked inside for the first time, he smiled. This is ours. I looked at him. Yeah. He placed his bag down. No cameras. I shook my head. No cameras. No security. No security. He smiled wider. So nobody can tell us what to do. I laughed. No one. For a moment, we just stood there. Two brothers who had spent years living in a mansion but had never felt at home. And now we finally understood something. A home was never about how expensive it was. It was about feeling safe inside it. The trial continued for months. Every day, more information came out. The public finally learned the truth about Alexander Blackwood. The charity foundation he used to build his reputation had been nothing more than a carefully designed illusion. He donated millions in front of cameras. But behind closed doors, he used vulnerable people for his own benefit. He manipulated families, controlled employees, destroyed anyone who threatened him. For years, he convinced the world that he was a savior. But the truth was much darker. He didn't help people because he cared. He helped people because it made him look powerful. One afternoon, I received a message from an unknown number. For a moment, I thought it was someone connected to Alexander. My instincts immediately warned me, but when I opened it, I froze. It was from one of the investigators. There was a short message. "We found more victims because of your evidence." I stared at the screen. Then I showed Noah. He read it silently. "He hurt more people." I nodded. Noah looked angry. For years, he had blamed himself for trusting Alexander. But now he finally understood. The problem was never us. The problem was the man who used people's hope against them. Noah looked at me. "Do you think we really changed anything?" I smiled slightly. "Yes." "How do you know?" "Because those people can finally speak." Months later, we were invited to speak at a hearing about child protection. At first, I didn't want to go. I didn't want to talk about Alexander anymore. I wanted to forget. But Noah convinced me. "You spent years fighting so people could know the truth." He looked at me. "Don't stop now." So we went. I stood in front of a room full of people. Politicians, investigators, families, people who wanted answers. For years, I had been the quiet kid standing behind Alexander's perfect image. Now, I was standing in front of everyone telling the truth. I used to think power meant money. I looked around the room. I thought someone with enough influence could control anything. I paused. But I learned something. Everyone listened. Power is not owning people. Power is having the courage to protect them. The room stayed silent. Then someone started clapping. Then another person. Soon, everyone was standing. But this time, the applause wasn't for a billionaire. It wasn't for a fake hero. It was for the truth. A year after Alexander's conviction, Noah and I visited the old orphanage where we grew up. It looked smaller than I remembered. Maybe because we had changed. We stood outside for a long time. Noah smiled. "Do you remember the day he came here?" I nodded. "You thought he was the best thing that ever happened to us." Noah laughed quietly. "I was 8. I know. I was stupid." I looked at him. "No." He turned toward me. "You were hopeful." I smiled. "There's nothing wrong with that." We stood there together, thinking about everything that happened. The fear, the pain, the years we lost, but also the fact that we survived. Years later, people still asked me about Alexander Blackwood. They asked if I hated him, if I wanted revenge, if I wished he had suffered more. My answer was always the same. No. They were always surprised. Why not? Because hatred would mean he still controlled part of me, and I refused to give him that. The greatest punishment for Alexander was not prison. It was losing everything he cared about: his money, his reputation, his influence, his ability to control others. The man who spent his entire life trying to become unforgettable became someone nobody wanted to remember. Noah eventually became a lawyer. He wanted to help children who had no one protecting them. I started working with organizations that investigated corruption and abuse. Together, we helped expose people who thought their money made them untouchable. Sometimes, people asked why we chose such difficult paths, why we spent our lives fighting against people like Alexander. My answer was simple: because we knew what it felt like when nobody came to help. And we wanted to make sure someone would come next time. One evening, Noah and I sat together at our apartment, the same apartment where we started our new life. He looked at me. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if we never escaped?" I was quiet for a moment. Then I answered, "Sometimes." "What do you think?" I looked out the window. "I think we would have kept fighting." Noah smiled. "You always believed we could win." I shook my head. "No." He looked surprised. "Then what did you believe?" I smiled. "I believed you were worth fighting for." Noah looked away, trying to hide his emotions, but I saw his smile. Alexander Blackwood once told me something. He said fear created loyalty. He was wrong. Fear creates silence. Fear creates obedience, but it never creates love. The thing that saved us was never his money, never his power, never his influence. It was a promise between two brothers, a promise made in the darkest place, a promise that no matter what happened, We would never abandon each other. Alexander tried to turn us into his possessions. Instead, he created the two people who would destroy his empire. He built the cage. We found the key. And in the end, the man who believed he owned our lives lost his own.